Hey everybody, it's DIY Coach Al over here at Lawn Care and Home Repair. And if you're anything like me, you just really hate when people come over to your house and, do things like that. I have no idea why people would come over your house and take a hammer and do something like that. But even after they did it, guys, we still have to fix it. So y'all hold on. I'm going to show you how we're going to patch this. And you know what? It's going to look like it was never broken. So you guys hang in there. Be right back. And like I like to say, go ahead and cue that music. Hey guys, so we're going to actually do a video today. This is lawn care and home repair. Got a lot of stuff going on with the lawn care right now. And I think I've been neglecting my home care folk. And I was talking to a patient the other day and I challenged him to get that hole fixed in the ceiling. You know who you are. I'm not going to call any names right here, but I said, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and shoot a video just for you and your wife and show you how to get this done. And I know that he already knows how to do some things like this, but this is something that's actually very common. Here we have a basic piece of drywall, 1/4 inch drywall. You can get it in different thicknesses, 1/4 inch, 5/8, I believe. Or I may be saying that right. 1/4, boy, it's been a minute since I've done the other sides. But anyway, the first thing you want to always do is make sure that you have the correct thickness when you're going to do a patch like this. Now, guys, this is just a sample piece that I have up here when I'm doing testing. This is kind of my workshop, my man cave down here. This is my tool zone when I really want to just come over here and look at that tool wall over here. I'm going to throw a picture up over there of just what my tool wall looks like. But the very first thing you want to do is make sure when you go to your big box store, Home Depot, Lowe's for sure. I can't think of any other place that I can refer you go to. I don't think Ace Hardware sells it, but I could be wrong. But they sell pieces of drywall that's about 2x2 or maybe 3x3. I'm going to throw a picture up over there of the size of the drywall that you need to get. But you want to get a piece of drywall because what we're going to do is cut a piece of this drywall out. Of the sample, not the sample, the replacement drywall that we get from the store, we need to cut a piece of that out so that we can get the exact size that we need for our hole. But we're not going to use putty. This is not something that you use putty for. We need to do joint compound, we need to do drywall tape, and we need to do a piece of drywall. We're going to cut this out, put a piece of drywall here, and I'm going to come back and show you how we get our backing for the drywall there, how we mix up our putty to get that there, how we put our drywall tape on there, and the tools that you're going to need. So you guys hold on, be right back. Alrighty guys, I'm back. So we are going to presume that we've already gone to the store to get our piece of drywall from that Lowe's or that Home Depot. It's not going to be big as this piece that you see behind me. But what we want to do is to create a workable space right here. So we're going to cut out a piece of drywall that's going to cover this hole. So this is just a sample piece that I have. And what we need to do is, now you want to make sure this is as straight as possible. You can eyeball it. I think that's about straight. So what we're going to do is trace around the piece that we need to cut out. Now, if it's not exactly correct, that's okay because we're going to be using the drywall tape to cover up that joint. So we have our replacement size right here. So the next thing we need to do is now cut out this, and we want to make sure that when we cut this part out that it is straight. So there are several things that we can use, several tools that we can use to cut this out. For demonstration purposes today, I'm going to use 3 things. I'm going to use this jab saw. I'm going to then use my reciprocating saw that I have to get from over there. And then you can also really just use a putty knife. Now, when you use a putty knife, It's a little more difficult to cut it out, but it actually results in less sand, or what drywall is actually made up of is a material called gypsum. And it actually gets very dusty. I said sand, let's get that out of your vocabulary. The gypsum or the drywall dust, you can actually get a whole lot of that when you're sanding or when you're cutting out. So what you would do, let's use our putty knife first. We want to get it in there, and we just want to come down right on that line. And because this is not heavy, it's really sharp. Make sure you're careful if you're doing it this way. You're gonna have to keep going a few times until you can get it all the way through the back of the other side of this drywall. And as you can see, there's very little dust right here. Now, the other thing you want to always make sure you're doing is not just cutting into drywall without knowing what's behind it. I actually did a project where I put up recessed lights or wafer lights in my ceiling. And behind drywall, behind ceiling, you have CPV, CPVC, you have gas lines, you have water lines, you have Romex electrical wires back there. So you never want to just blindly cut into drywall. I put this up as a sample piece, so I know that there's nothing back there. So the least you can do is get yourself something like this. This is called a stud finder. And what you do with the stud finder, you put it on the wall and then you move it over it. Now this won't let me know when I am at a stud. You're gonna get something like that, that light that comes on. I actually have several tools that I use. Another one looks similar to that. It's a stud finder, but it will also detect pipe and CPVC. Now, what it won't always detect is Romex. The other tool that I use is called an endoscope. And I'll put a picture of the endoscope up there. But the endoscope allows me to just put a small hole here, and then it allows me to look behind this drywall to make sure nothing else is there. When I was doing a project upstairs right by my garage, I'm thinking, okay, it's nothing behind there because it's a drywall right behind the garage. I didn't know. I was using my brad nailer, which is what you use to put molding and things on, trim on. I used my brad nailer and I was putting the brad nail into the drywall, and I heard this fizz sound, almost like you hear when you take a can of soda or something. I heard this fizz sound. Then I saw the drywall getting wet, and I said, Brina, I must have hit a pipe. Now, thankfully, I had the equipment to just go ahead and repair that pipe, but you never just guess that there is nothing behind that drywall. There could actually be something behind that drywall. So always use something like a stud finder or an endoscope to make sure there is nothing back there. Just because it doesn't look like there's nothing there doesn't mean that there isn't anything there. And when I was doing the wafer lights, I didn't know I was going across gas line. I was going across the line for my sprinkler system. I was going across the line where there were electrical wires and water pipes. So what I did was use my endoscope, and I also would just cut out a small piece of drywall, and I would just stick my phone up in there, and you can actually use the projection with your phone so that you can project your screen onto a TV or something like that. So I used my phone. It was a painstaking process, but I didn't repeat in the ceiling what I did on the wall. I didn't hit any gas line or anything like that. It was a longer process to get everything done, but it meant that I was doing it cleanly and didn't need to do any repairs or anything like that. So we use our putty knife to go this way. The next thing we're going to use is our jab saw. And the jab saw, this instrument right here, what you do is you get you right in that line and you plunge it in, and then you just cut. Now the jab saw is going to result in a lot of dust, but not as much as that third one. So once again, we jab and we just cut, and you want to make sure that you're cutting along those lines. Now, what you never do when you have this, we have 3 sides cut out. You never want to just pull it and then just try to make sure you don't pull any drywall, the paper off the drywall. Because if you do that and you pull that paper up, then there's a whole different technique you have to use in order to put joint compound and drywall tape when you pull the drywall tape up. So what we want to do is make sure we cut all 4 sides correctly. So what I'm going to do now, put you guys on hold, and then I'm going to go and get my reciprocating saw. And honestly, that one is my favorite. You guys hold on. Be right back. Alrighty, guys. Got my reciprocating saw or my multi-tool. This thing you can use to sand, you can use as a saw. If there were only a few tools that I had to have in order to do a project, it would definitely be a reciprocating saw. It would be my impact driver, which we're going to be using lately, and it would be my circular saw that I have over there. So we've already done the jab saw. We've done the razor. This doesn't go back and forth. It actually vibrates. This allows me to now cut into it. Once again, I know that there's nothing back here. This is the one that produces the most dust. So I'm going to start it first, and then you put it on your material. As you can see, that one is the quickest, and it allowed me to get all the way back there. So we have our damaged piece cut out. Now, what we want to do, and that's why, as I said before, we want to make sure we are cutting this right exactly. We are cutting it right along the lines that we trace. So what I'm going to do is to see, yep, we're good right there. Now what we have to do is to create a backing so that this drywall is not just reconnected, this repair piece is not just connected to the drywall and bound by joint compound and drywall tape. If you do that without having a backing, it will just push back out if somebody were to put their hand on it. So this is the part now where we take pieces of scrap wood like this. I got this from Home Depot. This is actually 1 by 2 by 8. That means it's 1 inch that way, 2 inches wide, and then it's 8 feet long. I always keep a few of these because when I have to do projects like this, whether at home or somewhere else, I always have some on hand. This is where, now you don't have to use an impact driver like I'm using. You can just use a screwdriver. Whatever you have, you can use. But you want to make sure that the pieces that you're using is actually longer than the hole by a few inches. Because what we're going to do is put this behind here to have a backing for our drywall. So what I like to do is to get my screw started. So we're going to put it right here. We're going to get that started through the drywall. And then we're going to get our piece of wood and we're going to put it up here and screw it in. Now, you always want to make sure that the screw breaks the paper of the drywall, because if it doesn't, it's going to leave a bubble right there, a bump right there. And we want to put one at the top, then we want to put one at the bottom. And just break that drywall right there. And we're going to do one on both sides. So we have the one on the right. Now we're going to come back with the one on the left. Once again, I want to start my screw right there. Then we're going to put our backing up here. And once again, we want to make sure that screw breaks the drywall. And you only need 2 screws to do this. And bottom. And once again, it broke the drywall. Now, the benefit of making sure we have these in alignment is that when we put our drywall up here, we already know exactly along that line where that screw needs to go. So what we're going to do now is take our replacement piece of drywall and put that, let's see. Now this piece wasn't entirely straight. Okay, there we go. So we have our replacement piece right here. Now we're going to get a few more screws. I suggest 2 on each side. Once again, now actually push that one in a little bit too far. Not a problem because we're going to have the drywall tape up there. We got one there and we have one here. And once again, we want to make sure that that screw breaks through the drywall tape. I only have 1 screw left, so normally I would just put 2 right here too. Just gonna go 1 right here. Nope, I'm not gonna teach you wrong. Gonna put this one in, get that one in, and hold on, I'm gonna get another screw out of the cabinet here. And boom, there we go. We got another one. There we go. We broke the drywall, the surface of the paper. So now we have our drywall piece to plug there. That way, if somebody unknowingly came and they put their hand right here, this is not going anywhere. As a matter of fact, this is now stronger probably than any place else on here because your drywall is actually put up with your studs back there. What is it, 24 inches, 36 inches on center? I forget, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot that. But our replacement piece is now even stronger than the piece that's right above it or right below it because we have wood backing. So you guys hold on. I'm gonna come back and show you how we mix up our mud or use some of the joint compound from the store. I like to mix up my own mud because what I'm going to be using is what's called a quick set mud. And I'll explain to you why we use that instead of the one at the store when I come back. You guys hold on. Alrighty guys, so we have our drywall joint compound. You'll commonly hear this referred to as mud. And like I said, you just want to get that peanut butter consistency. Yeah, that peanut butter consistency. And that's exactly where we are. So as I said earlier, normally we would put our embedding layer up here. It usually takes 3 different coatings. This hole is small enough. Now, if I'm doing like when I did the repair for where we hit that, that pipe when I was doing some other stuff upstairs, that was a much bigger area that had to be repaired. This is only about maybe 6 by 8. Let's see, my drywall, my putty knife is 8. Yeah, that's about a 6, maybe like a 6 by 7 inch that we're going to be repairing. The big thing is that we want to now get our mud to cover these cracks right here and to also cover these drywall screws. And make sure, definitely make sure you are using drywall screws. You don't want to, drywall screws are specifically designed to go into that drywall and to go into that wood. And it's designed to sink that flat head into the drywall. Now, if in fact you only had another kind of flathead screw, could you get away with it? Yeah, but if you want to do a proper repair, always use the proper tools, okay? So what we're going to do now is take our mud. Now, this is an 8-inch putty knife. So what I'm going to do is just I'm going over here. I want to make sure that this mud is covering my screws up there and where that drywall tape is going to go. This layer can actually be really flat. We just want to make sure that we have enough mud on here to cover our seams. Now we're going to come with our drywall tape. Make sure your drywall tape has this crease in it. You want to make sure you're putting it where that bend side is on the outside. So we're going to put our one right here, and we're just going to use our drywall tape, our knife to cut it. and we are going to press it into that seam. You definitely want to make sure you get enough on there so that you can press it into that drywall. We're going to come back. Now do our bottom piece here. Going to match it up right there. And we're going to get some drywall tape up under. We're going to get some mud up under this drywall tape too. So we're just going to put that there. We got both of our pieces on there so far. Now we're going to come with the next one, starting at the top. Remember, this is just for the embedding. You don't want to get too much mud under there because it'll bubble, but you want to make sure you get enough under there so that it's going to stick, okay? So then we're going to come with our last piece right here. And we're going to cut. We are done with our drywall tape, and we're going to press that once again into that mud. Now, as I said, this right here we would normally allow this to dry. Now, the other thing is when you're putting your mud onto, wow, this is starting to set up already. When you're putting your mud on, especially for this first coating, your embedding coating, you want to make sure you remove that excess mud to reduce your sanding. When you are sanding drywall, joint compound, mud, or sand, whatever you want to call it, it can be very dusty. So what we want to try to do is to get as flat a layer as possible without having to do a lot of sanding. Now, if this were a smaller hole, we would just make sure we're putting mud around the outside. But what happens is whenever you're doing a drywall repair, drywall is flat. This tape is going to raise it up a little bit. Then the mud is going to raise it up a little higher. Let's just pretend that we already have our first layer on here, which would be that embedding. Because this is so small, I'm going to go ahead and do what would be the second coating now. I'm going to go ahead and actually put this on here to cover the whole thing. We want to make sure that we don't see any drywall tape there. And you may have to kind of work your mud a little bit. We want to make sure we don't see any drywall tape there. We're going to go over it lightly. Now, if you don't have enough drywall tape up under, enough mud up under your drywall tape, it's going to bubble. Now, I see a little bubble right here. I'm just going to go ahead and move past that for now, but you definitely want to make sure you are putting enough of your mud under your drywall tape so that it doesn't bubble. Now, I'm just showing you how to do this for the sake of fixing a hole like that. So we got our drywall tape on, and we're putting this second coat on. Want to make sure we give it a generous amount because we don't want to see that drywall tape. And you have to do what's called working your mud. And that's making sure, it may take you several times to get that on there, work that mud, get that out. Every now and then you're going to find something in your mud. You want to get rid of that so that it's not on your project. So we're going to work our mud until we get to that point where we don't see any tape. See right there, there's something else. Get you out of there. Come on, get off here. There you go. I'm going to work that mud in. And when we're done with this coat, you shouldn't see that drywall tape. So we're going to come down, smooth. We're going to do what's called feathering your edge. That's when you're pressing this part of your blade, the top part, a little bit so that you're smoothing it out on the side and not leaving a lot of lines. But as I said, you're going to have to work your mud until you have it right where you want it, where we don't see any more of that tape. Here's something else. Boy, where did you guys come from? Let's get you out of there. All righty. And this is why we may have to sometimes go with that third coat. And as I said, you may have to work your mud until you are no longer seeing that drywall tape. Feather those edges. Get that. All right, so we're not going to be able to get everything, all of the little streaks out, but we want to get as much as possible to reduce our sanding. So right here, as I said, you may not get an entirely even coat. The reason we do 3 coats is that first coat, once again, we're going to presume that we had already finished that first one. The second one is to then cover everything, make sure we're not seeing that drywall tape. And then the third one is that we're going to spread it out, because in theory, what we've done is put a little bump in the wall. And that third coat, we would use a 12-inch putty knife, and we would spread it out even further so that when you look at it flush, you won't see that bump right there. But if you look at it from the side, you may see a little one. But for the most part, this is how we do it. Once again, you may have to work your mud, get that mud in there so that you're not seeing anything. Feather those edges and get as much out to reduce that sanding as possible. And then we'd wait for that to dry, and we come back and put our third coat on. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is for you, my patient. That's how we repair a big hole in the wall. You know, once again, when those folk come over to your house and they just take a hammer and put a hole in your wall. Hey, guys, do me a favor. If you like this content, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel. And for those of you who have a spouse, make sure you get something on you so they know you've been down here doing some work, okay? Please, in addition to hitting that like and subscribe, I always ask you, if at all possible today, do something to help pick somebody else up. There is no greater feeling in life than the feeling of knowing that you've helped somebody who can't help themselves. Hey guys, I'm gonna throw a video up over here on wainscoting. It is so easy to do. Guarantee you can do it too. DIY Coach Al out. Love you guys. Be blessed.